Do we have someone from Switzerland?
Yes, many people from Switzerland.
Good.
Good. So welcome everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning in the US, and good late night in the Far East. Thank you for joining. As you can see, we are starting our virtual event session for tonight. In the small screen below, you will see that the people are working on this one. And we decided to use several words to say welcome. We expected many people to join, and this is the way to say thank you to everybody. Welcome, grüezi miteinander, grüß Gott, as Oliver would say. Our session today on the PMI Switzerland virtual events is to speak, and we have a great panelist to speak about the news on the new guide, the 7th edition of the PMBOK that will be coming new in a couple of months. And we will have the first view of interpretation what Oliver is doing. The agenda for today is as follows. We expect to last around 90 minutes, this session. And we will start, I will give you a broad overview of some numbers on social media from PMI Switzerland. Then I'll give you specific instructions for the session that we'll handle. And the next will be Oliver Lehmann, our core panelist, will be starting his session, will be a semi-interactive session. That means he will be introducing some terms and we will having some polls and Q&A sessions. And to close, we will have a short feedback sessions. Again, we expect to hour around 90 minutes. So, quick, in PMI Switzerland chapter, we have around 26 plus volunteers, people like me that are members of the chapter and spend some time organizing this. We have spent more than 200 hours in organizing different events, and this is part of our interesting role. Our webpage, the PMI Switzerland event, has around 23,000 visits so far. So we're really happy to say that. It's one of the most visited chapters outside PMI. Another important thing is in Switzerland, we are around 1,700 members, with new members in 2020 around 200. Before jumping to the next session, to the next slide, I would let you know, we have also a pool of mentors that currently are working with 20 mentees. And we are providing right now mentoring masterclasses. That is something that makes this chapter also very interesting. You can join from anywhere in the world, and if your time does, you can join us. Last but not least, we have organized last year around 27 professional events, and we have around 1,100. Today, this event I think is the largest we have ever created. So thank you for joining, and let's start. Before joining with Oliver, we have in our social media, we have 4 different channels plus the web page of PMI Switzerland. We are very active using PMI Switzerland chapter in LinkedIn. We have also in Facebook. We try to keep updated in specific activities happening. So please follow us whenever you have time. We also publish some text, some important information through the Instagram. And last but not least, we have a video library in YouTube, register under PMI Switzerland. Like this presentation, it will be recorded and shared at the end of the day. And if you follow us in YouTube, that will also be, you will get an update every time we get one. Before we start, the event will be recorded and will be available, as I mentioned before, in PMI Switzerland social media channels. During the session, you will be mute, but please feel free to use the Q&A sessions that you have below in your screen. If these questions are not answered, we will try to answer them later. Now, during the session, Oliver will use Menti. We'll have the specific number of to log in a couple when he presents the slides, so we can interact with you. And as I said before, at the end of the session, I will collect all your emails and send you an individual email with the slides of the event. Can I share that, right, Oliver?
That's okay.
Good.
Perfect.
Perfect. And last but not least, we will share a small questionnaire to share some feedback with us. Good. Before we start officially, let me introduce Oliver Lehmann, experienced person in the Project Management Institute in Europe, in Germany, and in Switzerland. And I will give 4 fun facts of Oliver. First of all, 1995 was when Oliver first connected to the project management world. 1998.
Sorry, as a trainer.
As a trainer.
I was a practitioner about 12, 13 years by that time. I can't really say when it started. I was one of those accidental project managers. So little correction. That's when I started as a trainer.
As a trainer. I will correct that, Oliver. Thank you.
Yep.
1998 was his first official contact with PMI, with the Project Management Institute. Around 12 years later, he did what? His first class. Where was this class, Oliver? In Switzerland.
It was in Switzerland. Yeah.
So welcome, Oliver. Thanks for joining. And I switch to you.
Okay, so I'll take over the screen. Thank you for the introduction. So yeah, you see the right things.
Perfect.
The topic today, evening for us here in Europe, others may have middle of the night or early in the morning or whatever it is. And the big topic is PMBOK Guide 7th edition, upcoming 7th edition. What will change? It will change a lot. And what impacts will it have when it's on the market? And I think the impacts will also be massive of the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. So give you some time to get prepared for that and some knowledge on that. Before we go into that, a good colleague of mine, friend of mine, trainer as well, Frank Pisaladis from New York City in the USA, asked me to mention that today is the International Project Management Day. And a lot of activities are going on all around the world on the topic of project management. And he has a quote of the day: "You can see the value of project management in any skyline." Yeah. Now, by coincidence, I live in Munich, and Munich is proud to have no real skyline, at least not as American or Asian cities would have. But anyway, you can still see project management in the small skyline that we have here as well. 2 introductory notes. First of all, the PMBOK Guide is still in development, the 7th edition. So it may turn out that some things that I say today, by the moment that it gets published, may no more be correct, that some changes are happening there that are not predictable today, or that may have already happened, but somewhere under the hood, so that I cannot see it, and people I know can also not see it. Another thing is, another part of this note is that the development work is still going on at the PMBOK Guide, and this means there is a lot still confidential by PMI. I have made sure as far as I can that I am not communicating anything here which has not been previously communicated or published. And when we have the Q&A session, it may well be that there is a question that I say, sorry, I can't answer that. I'm not in a position to do it at the moment. So there are some things still not meant to be published. And if you develop such an important piece of work, I think it's very important to keep certain things confidential until they are there. Yeah. So that's also something where I have been very, very careful with. I don't want to run into troubles with PMI, of course. And I hand over the moderation to PMI Switzerland chapter for our first little survey.
All right, so we'll try to do a short exercise. Anyhow, most of you shared your location, but obviously we would like to run some statistics. And you should see now on your Zoom screen a short question. So where are you connecting from? Let's see which region has the most votes. Ah, Switzerland, it seems. You cannot see yet the results. I have the pleasure to, to see them. I can tell you so far, Switzerland is winning.
And only 81% voted. So come on, guys. We need to reach 270.
I want to go on.
We need to go on.
So the vote, you should see a poll in the Zoom application. Sarah, thank you for your question. On your Zoom, you should have another window popping up with the survey, which is currently in progress. 103 people out of 120 already voted. So I hope you were able to find it.
104, there's 16 to go.
16 to go, come on, we can do it. We can have 100%.
That's 84%, 86% of people voting, 105, that's good.
Yeah, it could be that if you join from your browser and not from the Zoom application, that the polling might not appear.
Might not be
That,
shown up. Okay.
unfortunately, could be the case. But I think we already reached quite a good percentage, 87% voted. So I think maybe we can share the results.
Yep.
Okay, let's share.
Let's share. Switzerland is winning.
Ah, okay.
But very close, followed by the rest of Europe. So
Yep.
not bad from an overall attendee list. I think this is from far the biggest we had on webinar. So thanks everyone for joining. All right.
So Oliver, you have people from Asia, 8 people from Asia, 5 from Africa, and 2 from Central America. So
yeah,
that's great attendees, and North America 11. So great. Thank you.
We will have some more surveys just in a minute. When the next survey, the idea is to have you participate somewhat actively, but also for us, of course, to know who is here and who are we talking to. Here a bit about me, Oliver Lehmann. Those people who don't know me, hang on, this is, yeah. I was author of some publications here. 2 books and lots of articles and papers. If someone is interested in that, please follow it up. And I'm the president of the Project Business Foundation. That's not a competitive thing to PMI. We have cooperated together. This is an association where we have a real focus now on project business management. This means projects that are done for paying customers, or you are on the side of the paying customer and you have lots of contractors, networks of contractors that you have to manage. That's where we work here. You see down there, by the way, our study impact of COVID-19 on project business. This was an example how we work together with PMI on our very specific topic. And there's the second survey.
All right, so then let us see what we get from the second one. So this is more about who you are and what is your current job within project management. So what is your current job within project management? Why are you here? What drove you? So
great voting.
Voting ongoing, 38, 40%, 44.
Oh, interesting. None of the above. We have already a couple of them.
So it's a very short battle, I would say. We are quite distributed with the roles. Let's give it some minutes, at least 1 minute more to reach at least the same amount of votes as before. We were at 87%, now we are at 78%.
28. More to go. For Carlos Serra, just an information, sorry we didn't include the UK. We decided to put as part of Europe, outside of Switzerland. You're right, next time we may think about UK.
Leon, that's a dangerous question that you're raising at the moment. Is UK part of Europe?
Well, until the end of the year, yes.
Yeah, of course they are.
Good.
All right, I think we almost reached the same percentage. We are 84%. So let me end the polling and display the results. Interesting. So most of the people run projects internally. You are very lucky. At least from my point of view, that is a lucky position to be in. Anything else you want to add on the results, Oliver, from the group?
It's interesting to see that we have people who are members of project management teams, quite a lot, 1 out of 5. Yeah, I would have expected more non-practicing experts like trainers and so like people like me. Yeah, so and supervisors. So I think it's an interesting result. Yeah,
a good combination of people. That's good.
All right.
So at least they are all here. So that's the agenda for tonight. I first want to do some myth busting because there are so many myths around the PMBOK guide. Before we talk about it, we should get them out of the world. And the next thing is to talk about the context. The PMBOK guide is one in a series of books here, 7th edition. So what does it really mean? Then I want to talk about the changes that we have in structure and in the contents of the PMBOK guide. And the last thing is, I think many of us are interested in that. How does it relate to the certifications of PMI? And I think the number one here is, of course, the PMP. And that's the last survey at the beginning. I promised that. I'm handing over the moderation.
Fun. Everybody was like in a competition here to see what. Well, the third question is a bit more serious. What do you expect from us tonight?
Yes.
Why did you join?
Actually, what do you expect from the PMBOK guide?
So you can vote several options?
Several, yes.
Okay. It's interesting how it evolves, huh? As soon as you can share, of course.
Yeah.
Really interesting to see.
So let's wait a little bit, 72%, 75%.
We have some more people to go.
We are close to
almost 84%.
Okay, I think we settled on 82%. I will stop the voting and share the results. It's quite interesting.
Very good.
So that's good, Oliver. No one is asking, or very few people are asking for a cooking recipe for managing a project. That's an easy one.
Because that's not what it is, exactly.
No, that's good.
That's not what it is. Yeah. Good. Very interesting.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So for the moment, this was the last one. So let's have some fun and go hunting for myths. The problem is, if you want to understand the PMBOK guide, if you want to understand what we are going to achieve, what PMI is going to achieve with the new PMBOK guide, first you have to understand what it actually is. So let's ensure that we have a common understanding of what it is and also of what it not is. The PMBOK guide, myth number 1 is the PMBOK. No, it is not. The PMBOK, in the understanding of the original authors, I should say, of the PMBOK guide, the PMBOK is not just a book. The PMBOK is more like a library, and the PMBOK guide is the guide through the library. It leads us through the library. So when you sometimes hear people talk about the PMBOK, it is actually wrong. And the person who I learned that from was the project manager of the first PMBOK guide project, 1986 at PMI. And when I was in his class, he always said, it's not the PMBOK, it's the PMBOK guide, and explained it. So I really have this information firsthand. It was very important to this person. So I think it's important, should be important for us here as well. I have a second myth saying the PMBOK guide is a best practice, a prescriptive cookbook for project management. And no, the PMBOK guide is not prescriptive. The PMBOK guide is descriptive. It is considered, generally considered, good practice for most projects most of the time. This means, to remain in this metaphor with cooking, yeah, it describes what is professionalism for a project chef and what do you need in your project kitchen to do professional project cooking. Yeah. It is not a best practice standard. There are such best practice standards out in the market, and many organizations have own methodologies. They have a set of phases and documents, templates, checklists, and so on that you need to follow. Yeah. These are cooking recipes for project management. Prince 2 is such a cooking recipe. And Scrum people tend to disagree with me on that, but I think Scrum is also a cooking recipe for project management. The PMBOK guide is something different. The PMBOK guide says we're describing here processes and tools and techniques and so on. And often they are helpful, but sometimes they are not. And it's your job to find out in a very specific situation, is it helpful or not? The third myth, the most important certification of PMI is the PMP certification. Really by far, PMI has 8 certifications plus the certifications that came with digital Agile with DA, which is another, I think, 4 certifications or 5. Most of them, not the digital Agile, but the other ones, most of them are somewhat linked with the PMBOK guide, but it's not the basis for the PMP certification. It's the basis for the CAPM certification, and this may also change, but the PMBOK guide is not the basis for the PMP certification. How it relates to the certification is something we need to discuss later, but the basis for the PMP certification is what we see here. This is the PMP examination content outline. PMBOK guide is there to describe or as a reference to ensure that a question that has been written for the exam is correct. It is appropriate to ask this question in our environment. It's relevant topic and so on. That's what the PMBOK guide is used for. So in theory, at least, you should not see a question in the PMP examination, at least in the current PMP examination. What is the output of process X, Y, Z? I know there were some questions like that, but in theory, the idea was that this should not be PMP questions. That's CAPM, CAPM questions, by the way. Yeah. So it's a reference. We'll come back on this point later again, go a bit deeper into that. You don't know who the PMBOK guide wrote? No, of course you can know it. The PMBOK guide has been written, reviewed, edited, and so on by hundreds of people. And there are long lists with names, pages 651 to 664, listing up these contributors. So it's a lot of people in that. By the way, that's a strength. We're talking about the 6th edition at the moment. This does not yet exist for the 7th. At least I haven't seen it yet. But this is the 6th edition. It's hundreds of people working on that. And if you like, you can go through this list and ask yourself, is there someone I know? If you will find my name in that and maybe some more names you know. But apart from that, we know who wrote it. And that's its strength, by the way. It's also its weakness at the same time. Sometimes these people do not have the same understanding of things and the same concept, same terminology. So that's a strength and a weakness as well. I think it's more a strength than a weakness. The PMBOK guide describes project management in all its flavors. Yeah. I think that's also not true. I have an example for that where the PMBOK guide is not that helpful. That's when you have a project as a contractor for a paying customer. We have a small group of people here. If you work for a contractor, or if you are a contractor, a one-person contractor, a freelancer or something like that, it's very well regarded by customers that you are certified, but actually it's a certification for internal projects. I have here an example, project initiation context, where we see something like we bring money home with the project, we run the project as a profit center, we have to take care of liquidity of the own organization. All these monetary aspects are not in here, and also not the legal aspects. When you do a customer project, you have to be very, very careful about legal aspects. I'm not talking about these legal requirements that we see here. I really mean be careful about law, because it could happen that in the end your project will end at court, and then the question is, what do you have in documentation, and what has actually happened in your project? So there are certain projects that are strongly described in the PMBOK guide, others are not so strongly described, or maybe not described at all. That's another myth I hear and see very, very often. PMBOK guide is waterfall, and waterfall sucks. Yeah. We are today in Agile methods, and there are only two kinds of projects: Agile projects and waterfall projects. And PMBOK guide is the waterfall project, so it sucks. I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong. What does it really mean to follow a waterfall approach? Waterfall approach means you're very, very predictive. You have a plan for your project from the beginning to the end, at least to the end of a phase, of a project phase. Yeah, in most cases, really to the end of the project. You have a long-term plan, which has some benefits. It allows for long-term predictions. If you have long lead times, when you have to book people, have to book equipment, when you have to order something today so that it will be there in 10 months, and you want to know when does it need to be there, when will we need the delivery, and when will we need the people, and for how long will we need them, and so on. That's what waterfall can do very well. All this comes with a disadvantage. It's getting very, very hard to apply changes in that. The more effort you put into your project, into the plan of your project, into granularity of the plan, into long-term forecasts, the harder it gets to apply changes to that, because this additional energy and time and blood of your heart that you put into this plan, you have to have the same whenever changes come up. So it's getting very difficult to change such projects. An example from Germany, just from the last couple of days, was Berlin Airport, the new airport, which was just opened, I think 3 days ago, something like that. And it was 9 years late, and the problem was their change request mechanism, which has not worked. And I think some politicians who did not understand that you cannot easily change some things in such a project without possibly destroying the entire project. We have another extreme, that's the Agile world. And the Agile world addresses this question of change and says, hey, we may be in a situation where we cannot make predictions because we don't know the requirements on the project. We don't really know what is needed here. So we have to go in small steps and small increments, have some deliverables available already after 2 weeks or so, and then walk to the next deliverables and so on. We have to do it all in small steps. So if we see we are on the wrong way or we do something wrong, it's not that difficult to correct that. Or if people's ideas are changing, the environment is changing and so on, we can adjust our project easily to that because there is no long-term plan that we have to change. It doesn't mean that they are not planning. They also plan, but they plan short steps, and then the next one, and then the next one, and so on, with retrospectives in and reviews and so on. That's the idea behind Agile. The place of the PMBOK guide is mostly between those two. Iterative incremental is a term used in the PMBOK guide. Another term used in the PMBOK guide is progressive elaboration. Progressive elaboration, in essence, means the same as iterative incremental. It means we go in small steps. You could also describe it like the waterfall is the description of a road, and the iterative incremental approach is the description of a wheel that turns on this road. And if the wheel is very small, then you're in Agile. So iterative incremental uses a planning horizon, which is somewhat reasonable between the two extremes, waterfall and Agile. Oh, another word for that, by the way, is rolling wave. Think of the wave in front of a ship. Yeah, while the ship is moving through the water, before the ship, you have this wave that is moving along the same way before the ship with some horizon here. And that's what we have as planning horizon here. In my example, it would be maybe 2 months. It could be 6 months or 8 months. We ask ourselves, how long into the future can we plan sensibly, reasonably? And how much into the future must we plan so that we can make the predictions that are needed? The PMBOK guide is useful if you have a waterfall project, but the focus of the PMBOK guide is rather this progressive elaboration, iterative incremental, rolling wave world between the waterfall at one end and the Agile world at the other. PMBOK guide is getting more and more open to these different approaches to project management, but generally that's where its place has been, by the way, over all the versions in the past. Myth number 7, that's very similar to this cooking recipe thing. Yeah? There is a best way to manage projects. There is something like a best practice, and if you apply that, nothing can go wrong. Yeah? That's not the world that the PMBOK guide describes. The PMBOK guide rather describes the world of shoes here, where we see one size doesn't fit all. We see on the left-hand side David Beckham's shoes, on the right-hand side Cristiano Ronaldo. And it's not different makers, Adidas and Nike, it's also different sizes. Actually, they are made for their feet. They are not from a shelf, they are special made, custom made for their feet. And that's what we think, what we need to do in project management as well. We have to be very, very situational here. And another thing that the PMBOK guide says is the body of knowledge of project management, this library of project management, is constantly evolving. Yeah? New methods, new practices are coming up. So it may well be that in some months' time, we are no more wearing shoes. We may have to wear boots or sandals or something like that. So it's all changing and it's adapting, it's adjusting. It's a very dynamic world. When I have students in my PMP classes, that's often the most surprising thing for them. They expected a very strict world with phase models and so on. They are there in the PMBOK guide, but they are not the focus of the PMBOK guide. The focus of the PMBOK guide is a world that is full of change and full of dynamics, and that's what the PMBOK guide describes. The context, what happened so far? We need to understand the changes, and the easiest way to understand changes is to have a look into history, a short, brief look into history, so that we see the place of this book and that we also understand the challenges that it is addressing. Books like the PMBOK guide at PMI, the first one was 1983, as far as I'm aware of. It was called PMI ESA report, the Ethics, Standards and Accreditation report. And by that time, there was a section in this book, and this section was called the Project Management Body of Knowledge. So the first Project Management Body of Knowledge was a section of a book. It wasn't even an entire book. This was changed in 1988 with the revised PMBOK. At that time, PMI had an own book for that. And this was revised again in 1996. This revision in 1996 was the first one that had the name A Guide to the Project Management Body of Knowledge, the term that has been in use since that time. And we see here every 4 years, sometimes 5 years, we have a new PMBOK guide. So now is the next one coming 4 years after, will be coming 4 years after the 6th edition, and it will be the 7th edition. And I think if you look at the graphics here, if you look at the design here, it looks very different. Some people like this new design. That's the new design of PMI. It's more colorful. It's a bit more playful. Some say it's too colorful, too playful. I think that's a matter of taste. I like it quite well. Another part of this evolution over time was that it grew in thickness and in our core topic so far, and that's processes. The PMBOK guide shows different approaches to describe projects. He talks about 4 or 5 pages. The 6th edition talks about phase models, but it much more, 400 pages, more than 400 pages, talks about a process model. So the process model is used to describe projects and project management, and the number of processes went up over time. One exception was 2008 when we had 42, but apart from that, it was growing all the time. And the other thing that was growing all the time was the thickness of the book. And it really got to a point where the question came up, can you really go on like that? Can you now come out with a book 900 to 1,000 pages or so? Does it make sense? Is this understandable? Is this useful? So it's going down again. Expect something between 250 and 300 pages. I heard in recent times the number 250 quite often. My experience with PMI and my expectation on the book when we will finally see the full result with all parts in, front matter and back matter and so on, I would expect it to be around 300 pages. So that's really less than 50%, maybe a third of the last PMBOK guide. It's getting smaller again, which makes learning easier, which makes reading quicker and easier. And I think another benefit will be that the language will be a bit easier to read, more concise. I think there was a good job done to make it easier to understand. Yeah? We see here these problems with the development, too voluminous. The number of processes became too many. PMI at one point in time tried to bring some together, make one process out of previously 2 processes and so on. And it somehow was difficult because it disrupted somehow the logic, the process logic of the PMBOK guide. And it had some negative effects as well. So the idea was we need to do a restart right from scratch. And that's what the new PMBOK guide is.
Olivier, let me interrupt you quickly.
Yes.
There are 2 interesting questions. Of course, one is from Elaine Jackson, and it is, when will be the PMBOK guide address sustainability? Do you know something about that?
When will we PMBOK guide?
Address sustainability.
Ah, I think that's Elaine. Is this a question
Yes.
from Elaine Jackson?
Yes.
I know Elaine. Hi, Elaine. Great to have you here. I don't think so. Not in the way she expects it. It is addressed, but not in the way she expects it, as an own topic. Yeah, it's not just mentioning it in her understanding. I think it's really addressing it, and as far as I see it at the moment, no. Yeah.
Okay, good. There are 2 more questions. One is from Ian Heptinstall from the UK. Is what kind of real-life projects are really highly predictable? Any chance the PMI will ban the misleading term waterfall from the PMBOK guide?
Can you repeat this again, please?
Yes. What kind of real-life projects are really highly predictable? It was a question where you presenting the different kind of projects.
Yes. To give an example of a very, not only predictable, but a project that requires a predictive approach from you. An example for me is tunnel construction or bridge construction. Yeah, you don't have much freedom to apply changes there. I had the topic in aircraft development. My major industry of the last couple of years was aerospace. And there you also need to be very predictive when you have certain certificates on components and of designs and so on. You can no more change them anymore. This gives them a need for predictiveness. Whether the environment will allow this by making it predictable, that's something you only know from hindsight. But again, there are some areas where the physics or the law or whatever it is require you to be predictive, but they make your world somewhat predictable as well. I see many other situations where the way is made by walking. You're a Mexican guy, I remember that. You know Antonio Machado, the Spanish poem? Yeah. Yes. Wonder there's no way, the way is made by walking. If this is your project, well, if the way is made by walking in your project, yeah, then I think agile methods are the best thing that you can use. But then there are projects where the requirement on you is different. Whether the world is predictable, actually, that's a different question.
Thank you. And continuing this question was if there's any chance that the term waterfall will be removed or banned from the PMBOK guide?
I would have to check if it's still there. I think it's a good idea to ban it because it's a very stupid term. Okay. And it's not really what it means. Actually, it is not a stupid term. The way we use it is stupid. Originally, it wasn't stupid at all. Yeah. I think it's about the way we use it that got a bit loose here. I think that's something we should give up. I'm not a fan of this word. I use it because other people use it. And by the way, I don't think anyway that the world is black and white. Those people who use the term in opposite to agile methods, they think the world is black and white. My opinion about project management between the black of predictiveness, more predictiveness than predictability. It's your approach. It's what you are, what you do. Between this monster on one side and the monster of agility, where you have difficulties to make forecasts, I think between those two extremes, there's a lot of space in between with different shades of gray. And my personal opinion actually is that the world of project management is extremely colorful. Yeah? So it's not black and white, and it's not even gray shades. It is a colorful world. Yeah.
Thank you, Lehmann. There's three more questions. Yep. Please, Isatu.
Yes, we have another question here from Basilo. He asked that for a waterfall cooking recipe, what it will be a good reference.
For what?
For a waterfall cooking recipe, what it will be. Yeah, what would it be for a good reference?
I believe there is no cooking recipe for project management that has some universal value. I don't believe in the term best practices in project management. I think there is no such thing as a best practice in project management. The same practice that is successful in one moment, in one project, may fail in another one. And actually, I wrote a book on that. So if he is interested in how it does not work, yeah, and how to be more situational, situational project management is my book, where I talk precisely about this topic and when to use one approach and when to use another one. Yeah. And it's about behaviors and a bit of game theory and some other things. So I wrote a book on that, but my position is there is no such thing as one approach that you can use in all projects, yeah, and in all project situations. It may even change during the course of the project. Yeah. But this leads us away from our topic. So I'd like to come back now.
Let's go back. Good. There's a couple of questions that we'll do in the next interruption. So
yeah, feel free. No problem. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah. So PMBOK guide was in a need for a restart, and that's what people saw at PMI, what a group of volunteers working on the new PMBOK guide identified, and how they started. By the way, I hoped to be part of this group. Unfortunately, the group came together the first time during my summer holidays with the family, and in the end, my family and the holidays were still more important to me than the new PMBOK guide. So I wasn't there right from the start, but I spent some time with review teams. By the way, much less than I wanted to have. And again, the whole thing is about time. I hope to do more, particularly on the German translation of the PMBOK guide. But I had some experience, enough experience to say, to tell you something about it. Yeah. So what is changing? We have the 6th edition here. That's the one most of us are aware of. And actually it has 2 parts. First of all, part 1 is called A Guide to the Project Management Body of Knowledge. The second one is the Standard for Project Management. In essence, the information is the same, but it's far more detailed, yeah, far more descriptive in the first part. The second part is very short, everything, it's very much shortened. I tell my PMP class students, for instance, please read the first part. You don't have to read the second part unless you're happy to have some repetition here. As a repetition, it is quite good. And also the structure is differently. You are probably aware of this concept with the 10 knowledge areas and the 5 process groups. And each of our 49 processes is a member of 1 knowledge area and of 1 process group. So the first part is ordered by knowledge areas. The second one is ordered by process groups. One thing that is changing with the 7th edition is that the standard for project management is now at the beginning. By the way, it's a formal ANSI standard, American National Standardization Institute. So in the US, this is a formal standard. If you are in Germany or Switzerland or somewhere, you would say, okay, it's a foreign standard. If you work with these foreigners, it may be a good idea to know it. But the second part now is the guide to the project management body of knowledge. And it's now moving away from the concept of processes, of knowledge areas, of process groups. Instead of the process groups in the standard, we now have a structure around so-called principles. And instead of the knowledge areas in the guide, we now have 8 so-called performance domains. Some of you may be aware of the use of the term performance domains in the content outline, in the PMP examination content outline, something we will see later again briefly. So this term is now also in the PMBOK guide, so that we don't have this conflict of terminology between PMBOK guide and the content outline, which I always found very, very difficult to train to people. It's just confusing, and this confusion is no more there. Then what is in both books, appendices, glossary, and index. And that's the same in both books. There will be new terms in the glossary, but the basic structure is the same at this point. Yeah. The overall approach is changing. In the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, the focus is on our processes. Processes describe what things are. What are the things that we need to do something? What are the things that we are doing with that? That we use to process these inputs to outputs. And so this is what the 6th edition is about. It describes project management in processes. When you change a document like the PMBOK guide as massively as it's happening here, you win something on one side, you give something up on the other side, and we are giving up this process model here. And I know of people who are very sad about that, and they think we are losing too much. Others say it was too formalistic anyway, and they are very positive about that. And I have a crying and a laughing eye, if you like. But it's just what is happening here. The 7th edition has a different focus, not so much what are the things that we do and that we have to bring about, but what do we need to do to bring value. So a very important aspect that comes up in the PMBOK guide again and again and again is the question, are we really adding value to something, to the organization we're working for, to a customer, to the society, maybe to the world? Are we really bringing value to that? This is described over principles, guiding statements, very broad statements that we can apply in our thinking and in our doing. Then it's mindsets and it's actions and behaviors. So the focus is changing very much from a more process-driven approach to a people-driven approach. We had process groups, we had knowledge areas, and we had our 49 processes ordered in process groups, ordered in knowledge areas. So this is now changing. 7th edition bases the description of what project management is, much more on a customer focus. When it says customer here, it could be an internal customer, a term that I dislike very much, but it could be something like an internal customer. If we have an internal customer, we may do it for the own organization, but the organization needs our results for an external customer. Think of development of products or of services that we are going to sell. This could also be the customer focus here. It could be a more abstract concept of a customer. The paying customer is rarely seen here. I'm very much working in this field now where we have projects done for paying customers. I think that's the kind of customer that, in my opinion, the true kind of a customer, that's not really meant here, at least most of the time, not meant here. At least it's not visible here. Areas of activity of project managers, performance outcomes. Outputs of processes are replaced with outcomes. Tools, techniques, artifacts. Artifacts is what we had as deliverables in the past. So we have a different term here for that. And framework, the general framework in which we are acting here. The PMBOK guide, 6th edition, has a focus on good practice for most projects, most of the time. This was a core tenet, a core statement, beginning with the 1st edition already, that this is what the PMBOK guide describes. Yeah? Not a best practice, but good practice for most projects, most of the time. And this is now replaced with principle statements and with a systems view. Systems view means to describe and to understand how these different things interact with each other, how a change at one little point can lead to changes, make changes necessary at 100 other points, and how they are all interconnected and how people are also interconnected with that. And it says applicable for all projects. The target audience is wider than with the 6th edition. 6th edition, primarily project managers. This was the primary target audience in the PMBOK guide. I know it was used by many others, including myself as a trainer. I saw it used in use in PMOs in organizations. I saw it used in procurement when contractors had to show that they know the PMBOK guide and maybe have certified project managers who have shown that they have some knowledge about that. But the main audience has always been the practitioner, the project manager with the boots in the dirt, you know, doing projects here. Well, the 7th edition, right from the start, says we are also interested in other people who are maybe in supervising functions over the project, a project sponsor, a product owner, something like that. Yeah, or inside the project have supervising functions for teams that work for the project, maybe. So these are also now addressed in here. Then tailoring, a thing that has grown in significance in the 6th edition. Tailoring was referenced. There was in the different knowledge areas, there was a statement on tailoring. And in the appendix was something also on tailoring again. So it was somehow addressed, it was referenced, but it was not really given a guidance. Actually, this was one of the reasons why I wrote my first book. PMBOK Guide said project team, project management team and the overall team have to identify those practices that are helpful in the project, and also those that may be not helpful in a specific project, or maybe just in the situation of the project. This can change during the course of the project. But it doesn't really give help when to use what practices, when to use what approaches, when to turn to which behaviors and so on. So there is no practical help in that. The PMBOK Guide 7th edition is moving in this direction and gives guidance how to tailor approaches, how to tailor the principles and the values and all these things to the given situation in the project. The structural elements, as I said already, are changing. In the 6th edition, our core topic was process groups, knowledge areas. We had the knowledge areas in the guide section and the process groups in the standard sections. Now it's instead principles, performance domains that are somewhere near to our process groups, but they don't have the same structure. Section on tailoring, there's a section on tailoring, and there are common models, methods, and artifacts. So the way it is structured is differently, and we lose something. I loved the process group approach very much because I found it very natural for a project manager to think in initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling and closing. I found it very natural, very intuitive. We are losing this. On the other hand, we can talk about things that go a bit deeper, yeah, like principles and performance domains. Yeah. The PMBOK Guide has 12 principles, delivery principles. We see this outcome orientation in all of them. The first one is stewardship, be a diligent, respectful, and caring steward for your project and for the people involved in the project and for the environment around the project. Then team, with a core statement, build a culture of accountability and of respect. Yeah. Stakeholders, engage stakeholders to understand their interests and needs. I'm not 100% certain about this stakeholder engagement. My understanding, my competitor may also be a stakeholder. I'm not sure that I want to engage my competitor in my project. Most of the time, at least, I think I don't want to do that. But for other stakeholders, yes, of course. We want them to support us. We don't want them to stand in our way. Focus and value, that's a core aspect now on the PMBOK Guide. We want to do things that bring value. We want to avoid things that do not add value to the project and that don't bring value. Whether this is always possible is another question. Then system thinking, this thing with the interrelationship of different system components. And if you touch one of them, how 100 others may be impacted as well. I think this is what drove Berlin Airport in disaster when they had to do, politicians required them to do certain changes without really checking what impacts do these changes have on other system aspects, and then they lost track of the project. Leadership, motivate, influence, coach, and learn. Then tailoring, the delivery approach based on context. Personally, I think the word context is not far-reaching enough. It should say situation, but basically it's a good direction to go to say the same approach, the same delivery approach that is successful in one moment may fail in another one. Let me give an example with the bridge construction that I mentioned earlier. When you are in an engineering office, in a design office, and you want to find a design which is nice, which is good looking, which is practical for the bridge. And when you're on in a time when you have to identify requirements on the bridge, how much traffic must it be able to allow over the bridge? And when you want to know the geological context over which you're spanning this bridge and so on. In this time, you're very much on a way where the way is made by walking. You cannot predict what will come out. It's very hard to plan for that. You will be happy if you have the people available all the time, and you could say, okay, let's plan half a year for this phase, and please all stay with us for this half year. But even this is not certain. But they are the ways made by walking. You cannot really predict what you're going to do, and you cannot really plan it, because it's about creativity and it's about discovery what you're doing here. When you build the bridge over a valley, maybe, yeah, you have to be very, very predictive. You have to know what people you will need, when, at what place, in what numbers, yeah, and materials and machines and so on. You have to be very, very predictive here, and you have to be very predictive also in matters of safety and of quality and many other things. I learned some time ago where the place of a project manager should be when the first trucks run over a bridge. The place of the project manager should be under the bridge. I like this very much. This tells us how predictive we need to be, because we may have to be under the bridge when the first heavy loads go over the bridge. Yeah. So context, I prefer the word situation here. I think it's more than just context. Context is part of that, but tailoring, very important aspect of project management. The same approach that is successful in one moment may fail in another one. I think it's a core tenet, should be a core tenet of project management. Build quality into processes and results. I think that's also a very important thing. Quality is not inspected into a product. It is not by testing and measuring and so on that we bring quality into the project. It's not by having retrospectives and reviews and so on. It is proactive, something we want to see in our project and in our product right from the start. Complexity. One of the core drivers of failure in projects and project management is complexity. We often see in a project, independent from the industry, we often see that there is a moment when complexity almost explodes. People are not prepared for that. They don't really know what is happening to them, and they lose track of what's going on in their project, what's going on in their product. In my seminars, I talk about the complexity trap sometimes. Complexity trap means you do some error search in your product and you find 10 errors. Yeah? You fix these errors, you do another error search and find again 10 or maybe more errors than 10. And you're in a situation when searching for errors and fixing errors does not reduce the number of errors, because whenever you do that, you create new errors somewhere else where you don't expect them. Again, Berlin Airport, I think, is a perfect example for that. Yeah. We have to understand complexity, we have to address it. Knowledge is important, experience is important, learning is here important. My personal opinion, that's the moment when configuration management is important. It doesn't have the same status anymore in the PMBOK guide as it has in the past. I think that's something we lost, but PMI has an own standard for that. So I recommend learning configuration management. That's the way to deal with high complexity, with almost overwhelming complexity. Address opportunities and threats. The two sides of risk management as we had them in the past. We don't have these deep going into risk management processes anymore. And as a trainer, I must say I miss this somehow, because I think that the PMBOK guide was one of the best books for risk management, on project risk management. Maybe it was too good. It was not easy to understand and easy to use and to transfer to practice. But I think it was very good. But in essence, the topic is still there. Adaptability and resilience, you know, that's about ourselves. You know? We should be adaptable on one side when the environment is changing. We should be resilient when these changes are really challenging for us and make our life and our job difficult in the project. Enable change to achieve the envisioned future state. We have a problem often in big projects where we have long predictive approaches, horizon, a planning horizon far in the future. It gets very difficult to apply changes there. And again, my example, Berlin Airport, it could well be that we damage a well-working project with the wrong changes. Change request management is a very complex thing. You can drive a project into crisis with poor change request management, but I think you can also get a project out of crisis with intelligent change request management. So that's what we see here. We have to be prepared for change request management, and that's something we also have in the old PMBOK guide. This is the other direction, the 8 performance domains: stakeholders, team, life cycle, and so on. Just have a look at them. And that's where we expect it to perform as project managers. Yeah? And again, performance domains, it's no more the focus on outputs. Our processes, as we still have them in the PMBOK guide 6th edition, have a process on outputs, what needs to be there at the end so that we can, at least for the moment, say this process has been done, this process has been finished. We may have to revisit the same process next day or maybe next week or so. So we are not doing them once. It's like a turning wheel that we describe here. But the basic element, the basic definition of our processes has been through the outputs. What do we want to create? What do we want to produce with them? Now the question is more about outcomes. What is the value they deliver to our project? So is that the question, what document do you have? The question is, what does it deliver in value to the project sponsor, to the people involved, other stakeholders? Yeah. These are the outcomes that the PMBOK guide describes. I want to just read it for you. I think you can read it by yourself. It goes a bit deeper than just looking at outputs. And again, we give something up. We win something new with this approach. Some people will like it. Some people would say that's great. That's a big help for my daily work as a project manager. Others will be less happy about that. That's what you do, what you get when you do changes like this. The deliberate adaptation of the project delivery approach, process methods, artifacts to make them appropriate for the environment and project. That's now the definition of tailoring in here. So we have a section on that, how to tailor our approaches, processes, methods, and so on, yeah, for the environment and the project. Let me add this little word here that I'm always missing, the project situation. It could well be in the same project. In one moment, you may have to do it differently than in another one. It's not something that's the same over the entire course of the project. That's what I mean with the word situational. And then we have the description of models, methods, and artifacts. We have some short descriptions of things that are somewhat similar to our processes, where we have documents, now called artifacts, where we have methods, tools, and techniques that we apply. Yeah. And where we also use models, small scale, simplified versions of reality. So this becomes an important aspect of project management. It could be that we have some proof of concept models, that we have some prototypes, something like that, that helps us do our project better. It could also be a diagram that helps us understand things. Yeah, it could be a 3D model on a PC or whatever it is. Yeah. Methods, the things that we use to achieve our outcomes, outputs, or other kinds of results. I think outcomes and outputs are also results. And artifacts, templates, documents, checklists, databases. In the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, there are 3 words often used: list, log, and register. Yeah, it's all the same. Lists, log, registers, they belong to that, and many more things. That's what PMOs help us develop. Sometimes they force us to use theirs. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes not. Yeah. So this is a structure that we've seen already, yeah, as a reminder, built on principles. The first part, the standard for project management. I think it's getting more important now for the future to actually read this. In the 6th edition, I told people you can skip the standard section unless you think it's helpful as a repetition, but it doesn't add new knowledge, new things that are important for the preparation. What it does is some repetition. Now it's really an essential part of the PMBOK Guide with the 12 principles in here and with the overall system for value delivery. How does the PMBOK Guide connect to PMP certifications? Yeah. And when, by the way? Yeah. First of all, we have a change in the PMP certification by the change to 2020 to 2021 by the end of the year. I'm currently working on preparing myself for the first seminars in that. I've blocked the entire November for seminar preparation at the moment, because this change is also a big change, but it is not the change in the PMBOK Guide. The guiding document for the PMP exam is not the PMBOK Guide. We had this as a myth already, and it's here again. So this is the guiding document. It's called the Project Management Professional Examination Content Outline. What a long word, yeah. PMBOK, sometimes abbreviated now. And you see it's also changing massively. The new version, the 2021 version, focuses around people, then process, that's more the traditional, what we had in the PMP so far, and business environment. And business environment, again, is internal business environment. It's not really talking too much about working for paying customers also. This is not changing here in any form. So people, process, business environment is the new order, the new world order in our PMP certification. Again, we gave up this very intuitive flow through initiating, planning, and so on. And I'm a bit sad about that. But on the other hand, we get some new topics to talk about, and we maybe have the opportunity to dig a bit deeper in matters of people, of organizations, and so on, than we could do in the past. So this is the change that we have ahead of us. When will the PMBOK Guide 7th edition become the reference? It's the reference for the examination. When will this become the reference? When will the examination change? There is some very careful prediction, second half of 2021, possibly. First, it needs to be there. It needs to be brought into the marketplace. The examination needs to be reworked again, but it could well be that in 2021, we have another change in the examination. There are some discussions. Will this be a hard change? Will this be a big bang? Yeah. Until that date, we will use 6th edition, and from that date on, next day on, we will use the 7th edition, or will there be a soft turnover? We'll see what's coming out of that. But these are the decisions that need to be made. Maybe it's already made and it hasn't found its way to me, but my last remembrance is that this is at the moment in discussion. We have some other examinations that are more or less tightly linked with the 7th edition. So there will be some more changes possibly in here, particularly CAPM, I think is directly impacted in here. And there's this very new on the right top corner, PMI Project Management Ready examination, this entry examination, maybe for young people who are interested to step into project management and want to have something to show maybe future employers. I'm interested in that and I have some basic knowledge on that. Yeah. So there will be some changes in here as well. And now I'm open for your questions. Yeah. Ask me your questions if you have. Or
thank you, Robert. We have many questions. So
yes.
I hope we have enough time in the next 10 minutes to reply. But well, there are. Let me start over with 3 that you already.
Leon, may I ask you for a favor? Can you share the screen where you have the question in? Is this possible?
Yes. Let me. Actually, yes. Yeah, wait a second. I will do it right away.
Actually, Oliver, you can click on the Q&A and actually you can have them yourself.
Yeah, but so okay.
And then it can be
can do that
because you are already sharing.
That's correct. That's correct. So I have to go to.
On below you, there's a Q&A and chat. There are 2.
Otherwise, you can take.
Doesn't
I
offer
can
me,
share my screen, no problem.
It doesn't offer me the share.
No problem. Let me share my screen.
Okay, then just ask. Then just do it this way. Yeah.
Stop. So I ask you to stop sharing. Now I'm sharing. There you go. Yes. Okay. Good. So you should share my screen right now. The questions are, let me summarize 3 of them, is when will be released? I think you already mentioned there's no clear date, but should be the second half of 2021. I
must be careful, sorry. There may be a date. I don't have it.
Yeah,
and if I would hear it, I wouldn't rely on it.
Okay.
Okay.
The second one is how different is from the current PMP exam? That's one of the second question we have.
How different is?
From the current version of the PMP exam and the new version?
Yeah.
And
I think the new examination is very different already with still reference PMBOK Guide 6th edition, and it will change dramatically again with the 7th edition.
Good. And one of the interesting questions I was summarizing from the chat is, does PMI expect that the executive sponsor read the complete PMBOK guide, the new version?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't think so. No, but they can use it as a reference, and say, my dear project manager, I'm expecting you to do this and that for my project, to do it in this and that way also. So they may have quite a bit of knowledge of that. Yeah, maybe a lot of knowledge of that. Whether they read it or have someone supporting them implement it, that's another question. If I think back to the executive sponsors I met, they always had someone who would do this job for them to read and to find the right place in the PMBOK guide and the right quote in the PMBOK guide. Yeah, I don't think they will do it alone.
Okay. Good. So Isa, do you want to read the questions?
Yes, I have a question here from Stefania, and she wants to know what is the difference between an output and an outcome in the PMI sense?
Output in the PMBOK guide sense is in
PMI sense, yeah.
Yeah, I would say in the PMBOK guide sense.
Okay.
A PMI is more than just PMBOK guide. But in the PMBOK guide understanding, PMBOK guide 6th edition and previous editions, up to the 6th edition. Output is in most cases a document, a kind of a document. It could be a piece of paper, it could be a database, it could be something painted on a wall, big WBS also, it could be a collection of documents, more like a folder, but that's what the output is, something which is tangible, something where you can say, hey, that's it now, I have it here. And if your boss asks you, do you have a risk management plan? Yes, boss, here is my risk management plan. I will send you a copy of that. That's the output here. So project management in the description of the PMBOK guide is very much a collection of processes meant to bring about outputs like that. Outcome. You have a outcome, for instance, if you have a bridge construction, people get hurt. Maybe you have some accidents and people die. That's an outcome you don't want. Another outcome that you want is the bridge is finished, cars can drive over the bridge. These are outcomes. So it's more what is the project meant for, and how is the project expected to bring value. A document as such may have zero value, but an outcome in this understanding has value, and it could be positive value, or what we try to avoid, of course, also negative value.
Thank you. And there's another question here as well from Robert. He wants to know, will the issue log disappear in the PMBOK guide edition 7 or become part of its artifact? Can
you repeat that? I didn't understand it, sorry.
Okay, it says, will the issue log disappear in the PMBOK guide 7th edition or become part of its artifact?
I have to check. I would have to check. Yeah, I would have to check. I can double check. If this is important, I can double check it. Yeah.
There's a couple of questions, Oliver, regarding the current version and the new version. So let me summarize. First of all, will be a due date when we will stop using the PMP 6th edition exam for the 6th edition for the exam?
My last status of information, which goes back some weeks, is this was in discussion, and it was under consideration to have a soft turnover from the 6th edition to the 7th edition. My personal opinion as a trainer is, I don't think that this is a good idea. But it will not be me to decide that. I think we need to have such a cut. And the reason, by the way, is quite simple. We have to provide a book to the students. We have to know which book to give them. That's the reason.
Okay. And the second one connected with that one is, of course, if Switzerland will be selling the book, the PMBOK, but it's something we expect next year, ideally next year, to receive the new version, the new PMBOK 7th, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Good. You want to read another one, Isatu? We have 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. There's another one from George. He said that, do you know if the new PMBOK guide also considered inter-company, so-called business or customer project?
It's a bit of paradox situation, and it's now me as going with the Project Business Foundation in addition to the to PMI, of course. But the thing is that if you are in a customer project, or some say customer-facing project, if you are in that, your customer will love it to see that you're good in doing internal projects, that you have learned to do internal projects, that you have the PMBOK guide, which focuses very much on the world of the internal project. So you have understanding for them, and you have empathy for them, and all those things. Your own discipline, in your own discipline, that's only part of your professionalism. Your professionalism is, of course, doing a good project for the customer, make the customer happy, make the customer satisfied. but you have some other aspects of project management that internal projects don't have. One thing is you have to make your project profitable. Otherwise, as a contractor, you will not survive too long. And an even more difficult thing sometimes is liquidity, is cash flow. You lay out money for your customer, and you have to make sure that this money comes back in time before your own organization becomes insolvent. Yeah? And often it's not just about one project. There may be a portfolio of 50, 100 projects or so. And someone has to look at cash flow over all these projects when you lay out money for your customers. So it's new aspects that come into project management. These are not in the PMBOK guide, and these are not discussed at PMI.
Good. Thank you so much, Oliver and Isatu. Sorry about that. We are reaching the time now.
I have one more thing. You allow me to show my Menti?
Yes, do it before we close. And then just for information to everybody, you will receive a message with a QR code so you can provide some feedback to this session while Oliver presents the last session.
Yes.
Very good.
I would like you to go to our website, menti.com. If you have a smartphone, sit in front of your PC maybe and have a smartphone, you can just scan the QR code. And when you are in menti.com, use the code 2943148 to open a page where you will see a question. And by the way, you can use any word to answer this question. I put some words in, you can just copy and paste them, makes your life a bit easier. But if this is not what you think, what you want to answer, write into the answering fields, the things that you think that you want to say. Yeah. I just have here. Yep, it's coming. Someone wrote less cookbook. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was never a cookbook, but yeah.
Russia, if you're listening, Russia, if you're listening.
Would you want to share something?
Can you see it, the word cloud?
No, we
No,
see.
then I will share the word cloud.
Okay.
I think it's a very interesting thing.
That's what this group has developed.
Yes. Someone wrote much better, or copy and pasted much better. Huh?
Oh, very nice. That's really good. Good. So
right, I'll hand back to you. Thank you for allowing me to be your guest and to show this presentation.
Thank you, Oliver. It was really good to work with you, to have this timing. And everybody joining the session, thank you, everyone. Have a good night. We will review the questions and we will reply with an email with a specific link so you can see, first of all, the recording of the session, second, the slides shared by Oliver, and lastly, QR code so you can give some feedback on the session you had. Thank you so much, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning in the US. See you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.